Mr. Chairman, you told us that you thought that this bill was aptly named. I must say that I strongly disagree, and so does the Anti-Defamation League, which said that the whole use of the Zuckerbucks was an anti-Semitic trope, suggesting that rich Jews control levers of power. It reminds me of the claim of another of our Republican colleagues that Jewish space lasers were responsible for California wildfires. I'm sure that's not your intent nor that of the author, but the use of this term is really, I think, pretty outrageous. Let's look at what this nefarious Jewish money did across the country. And first remember the time that we were in at the time that Mr. Zuckerberg made these charitable contributions. It was a time of incredible mismanagement and misinformation from President Trump that led to thousands of deaths. This is during the time when he was recommending that people inject themselves with disinfectant so outrageous that Lysol had to issue public warnings against doing it. This was a time when he suggested that horse dewormer was perhaps the proper treatment for COVID, as thousands of people died without adequate preparation and without this misinformation. So how was the money used? Well, I turned to my home county, which is Travis County, Texas, Austin, Texas, and we got $1 million as a result of this funding. And the money was used for safe and efficient election day administration. They were having difficulty getting people to come out to be election judges. It involved poll worker recruitment. It involved training and safety efforts so that people that came to the polls wouldn't be scared away, and it involved encouraging early voting and voting by mail. And that's the same type of thing that happened around the country. In fact, to move out of Texas for a moment to Pennsylvania, a report that all 67 of Pennsylvania's counties were invited to apply for this money. 13 of the counties that former President Trump won in 2020 were among those that received assistance. And to turn to Mr. Kelly's county, Erie County, the employees there, the election administrator there said, we would have had to go to county taxpayers several times without these funds. Of course, when we turn to federal funding for this and the Republicans were in control, we asked for an increase in the election security grants from the current level. Instead of increasing those election security grants, they zeroed them out so that there was no federal assistance at this time for election security. In Texas, which is ground zero for voter suppression, 50th among the states, the worst in the country in terms of voter suppression, there was not support, and the work that Mr. Zuckerberg did through his charitable contribution was not aimed at any particular county. In fact, all of this suggestion that it only goes to counties that President Biden won, the whole Democratic approach is turn out the vote. The whole Republican approach is turn it off. The fewer the voters, the better. And so the suggestion that some of this money went to encourage people to vote in Houston or in Austin or in Dallas or any of the other urban centers of Texas is just a suggestion that if you make it safer, if you made it, for example, in the case of Houston, they used all 24-hour-a-day voting so that people that were night workers could actually turn up at the polls. Republicans have been so encouraged by the increased turnout that they had in Houston that, like this bill, they have denied private groups the ability to contribute in the future, and they have prohibited 24-hour voting. They want to prohibit any drive-by voting where those who could come through and cast their vote easily. That's the kind of thing that turned up the vote, yes, in counties that President Biden won, but not in any improper way, and this money was offered across the country in a nonpartisan way. This isn't about election interference. It's about promoting the myth that President Trump won the last election, and that the only reason that he is not in office is because of these conspiracies that were against them. This promotes the whole notion that led to the mobs attacking this Capitol in the insurrection that Trump inspired on January the 6th. There is just no amount of Republican misinformation that could overcome what Americans have been able to see for themselves concerning that insurrection. The Trump-inspired conspiracy theories like the Zuckerbuck story is just another way to appeal to the far right. To preserve our democracy, we must ensure that truth overcomes these lies. And I yield back. Well, thank you. I think the opposition to this amendment shows how extreme the original bill is. It's a very reasonable amendment, but I want to take this opportunity, given some of the comments that have been made by Republican colleagues since my earlier remarks, to ask unanimous consent to place in the record the Times of Israel Zuckerbucks, Republican nickname for Facebook CEO, riles anti-Semitism watchdog, and I offer that for the record.
Without objection.
And let me just point out that while I certainly made clear in my remarks that I was sure this wasn't the intent, that this does perpetuate using this title. This is a technical amendment to federal law. It didn't need to use the term Zuckerbucks, but I'm sure my colleagues will remember that they called Jonathan Greenblatt here to testify only recently about events on campus. And here's what Mr. Greenblatt had to say about the title of this bill. In recent years, we've seen anti-Semites alleging that Mark Zuckerberg is proof of this stereotype. Those who use the term Zuckerbucks, particularly members of Congress, are dangerously enabling this anti-Semitic trope, and we urge these policymakers to stop using this term immediately. There's more about this in the article that's part of the record if my colleagues want to read it. This bill did not have to have this title. The bill is misguided. The opposition to the amendment is even more misguided, but this name should not be associated with the legislation. I yield back.